Hey folks, everything new under the sun. Quick little update here. Canada is getting ready for a nuclear war. Nationalpost.com. And this was 7 hours ago, July 19th, 2023. This article is dated. Canada's updating plans, protocols for a nuclear catastrophe amid Ukraine war. So the article basically says, that Canada finally, they've been talking about it. This is just news coming out. Canada is dusting off and updating emergency protocols to deal with fallout from a possible tactical nuclear exchange in Europe or the spread of radiation across the ocean from a Ukrainian power plant explosion. So again, do they have intelligence that that there may be some sort of nuclear event? Certainly, you've heard it from many channels, including this one. That there were lots of false flags planned. Both sides could possibly have reason to basically push a nuclear disaster to force one side to play a particular hand. And most agree that it would benefit Ukraine more than it would Russia to have some sort of nuclear accident, some sort of dirty bomb, because that would draw NATO into it. And it seems that Canada, Western nations are now getting ready, and we'll start seeing things like cell phone text messages, for testing purposes only, and that sort of thing, and iodine tablets being stockpiled. And I think all these things have already happened, because every time we see an article, these things are well past the time when the government has actually looked at it. This is just information getting out to the rest of us. But yeah, and we were asking months ago, where was the government? What were they planning? How come there's no communication about this? But I think now as this idea gets into the mainstream media and the public's, the main public's ears, if you want, not those people who are watching and listening like you and I, then fears ratchet up, and the government has to get ahead of that and announce to people that they are planning for something. They're ready for all eventualities. Ottawa is also taking steps to finalize a protocol for advising Canadian public of an incoming ballistic missile, says notes obtained by the Canadian press under access to information. So it's like pulling teeth to get this information. The government isn't offering this information to anybody, so they're going after it. Ongoing military activities have eroded safety systems, disrupted routine maintenance, weakened emergency response capabilities, and impacted operating staff, increasing the risk of severe accident. It says officials anticipated the potential effects of an uncontrolled release of radioactivity through direct exposure or eating contaminated food would depend on proximity to the plant. Global Affairs Canada procured potassium iodide pills. Where is that here? With stocks distributed to Kiev and neighboring diplomatic missions in August of 2022. And, so now they're dusting up plans, for things to do locally as well. The problem is that along East Coast North America, U.S. and Canadian nuclear power plants exist. They don't exist on the West Coast, of course, because of the fault lines and the earthquake potential there. So they're on the East Coast, which, has much less in terms of potential for earthquakes. There are minor tremors, but no big earthquakes, and so it's a prime place of attack if a nation wanted to distract us and cause a nuclear poisoning effectively across the country and cause chaos and cause economic destruction. That would be one of the easiest ways to do it. You don't have to drop a nuclear bomb. You just have to have a hypersonic missile fly into and take out a power plant, and that would cause enough fear and enough chaos in North America, in Canada, in the United States, to basically, use up all the government's resources just trying to keep the public calm at that point. So that's interesting. This is War News 247. Ukraine is now landlocked. Russia cut off physical access to the North Sea, destroyed port infrastructure in Odessa. So there's some incredible photos here of basically damage to the port. So this is Odessa. This is port. There's damage to cranes. You can see that blown up and on fire. You can see a big crater there underneath a crane. There's some images of some grain silos. These are grain silos, some fires. There's a fire truck in the bottom there. Here's another image of, grain silo. And this is going to lead to economic collapse and really the famine that is spoken of in Revelation chapter 6, the horsemen of the apocalypse, and the famine that is to come. Now, famines and economic collapse in World War III's or world wars of any sort don't start, with the flicking on of a light. There's a buildup to them. There's increasing intensity of whatever the item it is until it peaks, till peak famine, if you will. And just in the days of Joseph, when there were 7 good years and 7 bad years, again, it wasn't flicking on and off a light switch. It was a period of time over which things changed into a famine, and the famine got worse. And that's exactly what the Bible says. The 7 bad years started, but it said, but the verses continue and say the famine got worse in the land. So this will start out as something small, something not that big a deal. We're managing, a little bit less, fewer food items on the shelves, and yes, prices are a little bit more expensive, but it's not too bad. Where it's like the frog boiling, right? Have you heard of stories of prices increasing in your grocery store and less selection, less brand names? Maybe you can't get your favorite pasta, your favorite box of cereal, whatever it may be. This is where these things start, folks. So we're in the beginning of economic collapse and famine. Here's some more images of destroyed grain silos. They're not going to fix these for years. They don't have the money, and they're not going to fix them during wartime because they'll just be bombed again by Russia. And so every time that happens, Russia's going to go in and do more damage. And this is going to cause more famine around the world. And it's not going to hit us first because we don't buy grain from Ukraine necessarily. Of course, Canada exports a lot of grain, but it's the eastern nations and South Africa and nations like that, the Muslim nations, etc., that buy a lot of this grain. European countries buy this grain. They buy the food that's closest to them, right? So it's going to affect them first. And as they are affected, they will start looking for grain supplies elsewhere. They will start buying up Canadian and American grain supplies and maybe Chinese grain supplies. That will put upwards pressure on the price of those supplies because supply and demand. You got more people demanding the grain, but the same amount of supply, but now the number of people that want to buy it are more. That price is going to increase, right? Because people are going to be willing to pay more. They're going to say, "Look, I want to get ahead in the line. I'll pay more for that grain than the other guy will." And so this is supply and demand. This is the free market working, but it means that there will be less, ultimately less supply because more people looking for it, and higher prices. So, folks, we are on the downhill track to economic collapse and the famine, which I believe, again, is the beginning of what is spoken in Revelation chapter 6 and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. This is an interesting article. This is from Zero Hedge. I warned you guys in 1984, and you didn't listen, says James Cameron, director, and he's highlighting the fear of AI takeover. And he's framing this as it relates to AI in war. There will come a time when AI is doing, all the warfare, and it's going to be going so fast, on both sides, the AI. It's so fast that we won't even be able to control the escalation. We won't be able to say, okay, stop, you're going too far, because the computer is, operating so much faster than we can kind of take in the information, decide what it's doing, and tell it to stop. I think the weaponization of AI is the biggest danger. He said, I think that we will get into the equivalent of a nuclear arms race with AI. And if we don't build it, the other guys are for sure going to build it. So we could put a moratorium on it in North America or in the Western world, in the free world. But that's not going to stop China from developing AI, for military purposes, for whatever it be. So there's not going to be a moratorium. This is going to escalate. All sides are going to do it because no sides are going to stop. It says you could imagine AI in a combat theater. The whole thing just being fought by computers at speeds humans can no longer intercede. And I've said this before. When they unleash AI, when World War III starts, it's not going to be a war of hypersonic missiles. When they unleash militarized AI, weaponized AI on the world, there's going to be hacking attacks like you've never seen. There's going to be distributed denial of service attacks or DDoS attacks like you've never seen. There's going to be hacking like you've never seen, all done by computers, all done so fast that we don't even, our heads are going to be spinning with how much of our technology is going down, having troubles, being intermittent. And that's, again, that's the first thing. When you go to World War III, the first thing they're going to try and take it is communications, because they won't want the enemy to organize and come up with a response to whatever attack is being wielded against it. And a preemptive strike in terms of AI is a much easier thing to get the go-ahead for than nuclear weapon, because there's a mutually assured destruction with nuclear weapons and no one wants to die. But if you unleash AI on your enemy, well, then it's not so bad, because no one's really dying. You're just taking out communications, electronics, right? So it's going to be a lot easier decision for China or Russia to preemptively attack with artificial intelligence. And you better believe that they are working on this. And it is likely in the theater already. Indeed, with hypersonic missiles, they already have computerized tracking, control and tracking systems on board. They have computers on board. That's an example of very basic artificial intelligence. The unit is flying itself to its target. That way you don't need communication between the missile and ground sources to kind of direct it, laser guided or something like in the old days. The onboard computers do that. So you can scramble and block radio signals all you want and jam them. But those missiles are going to keep flying because they have onboard computers that have cameras looking at the landscape. They already know where to go, so you're not going to stop them that way. And again, that's AI. So the next level of AI is all-out electronic attack in terms of cyber attacks. So, do you remember Cyberpolygon? That's kind of the next thing after Event 201, which was the planning and the organization for the pandemic. Cyberpolygon is this idea that all the nations came together and said, you know what? I think it was Klaus Schwab that said, there's going to be massive cyber attack. That's going to be the next pandemic, effectively. It's going to be a massive cyber attack that's going to bring the world to its knees and bring the economy to its knees. And I think he is right. When you unleash AI, and nobody knows what AI is going to do when you unleash it. I don't even think the military knows. It's going to be shock and awe, but in a different way. We're going to be sitting here and our computers are going to go dark. Our electricity is going to go dark, and there's not going to be a shot fired. It's going to be all electronic warfare, shutting off relays and pumps and switches at power stations, which will cause meltdowns and all sorts of things. Russians, Chinese, any enemy, even false flag enemies, they have all this planned out, and they're saving it. They're not going to use it now. They're not going to show us what they're doing, because they don't want us to prevent against it. So they're saving up all the best communication and knockout options in terms of cyber attacks for the preemptive strike. And it's going to be a much easier decision to make to go with the preemptive strike of AI and cyber attacks, cyber warfare, than it will ever be for nuclear weapons. So World War III, indeed, may not be fought with nuclear weapons. It may indeed be fought with artificial intelligence. So this is pretty old school, with bombs and hypersonic missiles. When the real world starts between technological equals, if you will, Russia and the United States, it's going to be the electronic warfare that will be front and center. So I'll leave there, guys. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video.